One of the obvious questions is what happens if the company goes out of business? And ironically for us, it might actually be a good thing. What's up guys, it's Sebastian from Ask Sebby Business, and today we're looking at the Capital on Tap card. We'll look at it using 3 different levels, the basics of the card, whether it's a legit company or whether it's sus, and number 3, competition, and also what happens if they go out of business. Big favor before we dive into all of this is to give this a thumbs up, and if you are someone new here, to consider subscribing. The Capital on Tap card is made for small businesses, and they want to make your life easier. Outside of the intro bonus that we're not going to cover today because those do change, the card isn't too bad at all. The core premise is that you're earning 1.5% cash back, and that's pretty much it. There's no annual fee and also no foreign exchange fee. If you're someone coming from the personal side, 1.5% doesn't sound that great, but that's pretty much the baseline for business cards for no annual fee ones. Okay, so who is this card good for? I'd say that it's very competitive for small businesses that want relatively fast access to credit and a decent credit limit. Credit limits are from $1,000 to $50,000 and they get back to you in 48 hours. It's also a soft inquiry, so if you get rejected, it won't negatively affect you. This is a pretty stark contrast to other issuers that'll happily give you hard inquiries all day. If you are someone looking to keep a balance on the card instead of just using it as a credit line, I would be careful. So on their page, they're marketing it as a great rate as low as 9.99% APR. I'd say that's fine, but there are other options that feel a bit lower that I'll probably cover in future videos. In effect, you need to consider whether paying that interest helps you grow the business more. So if you're paying all this interest, is it helping you make more money? Or alternatively, whether it's a going concern thing and keeping your business alive, especially during a recession. If it's a super small business, then it might make sense to look into personal options. So there are a lot of cards out there that will happily give you 0% APR for 15 months. I feel like credit is a pretty weird thing in that when you need it, oftentimes people don't want to approve you because you look more risky. But when you don't need it, then people happily give you 0%. It's fine, and if you like it, then great, but I don't want you to pay 9.99% because they're telling you it's a great rate. Main takeaway for level 1 is that it's a decently competitive card, no annual fee, 1.5% back, and also no foreign transaction fees. For a lot of smaller and mid-sized businesses, I feel like the credit limit of $50,000 can be pretty helpful. On that note, if you do want to learn about this card or pretty much any other card out there and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebby.com, and also down below in the description box. Please make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise it's a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Moving on to level 2, let's talk a bit more about the company. Capital on Tap isn't really a household name like Capital One, Chase, or Citi, which always begs the question of whether it's a fly-by-night operation or something trustworthy. We can actually look at news articles and also Crunchbase to see how much they've raised, to see if it's a going concern and if it's legit. So going to Crunchbase on the top of the page, we see that they've raised $1.3 billion. It's a pretty solid number, but for fintechs, there is a bit of nuance. If you scroll down, you can see what type of money they raised, and they have debt rounds as well as equity. Debt facilities are kind of interesting because it's not other companies investing in their company per se, as you would expect with other stocks. It's more so access to a credit line. So for example, if I was starting a neobank, I would need credit facilities in order to lend money out. We do see that they raised an equity round for $200 million in April of 2022. Clicking into it, it's from HSBC as well as Varde. I've never heard of Varde before, but HSBC is a giant company, so there is a bit of assurance there. Another easy way is also just to search for news articles. So from UK Tech News, we see that it's a London-based fintech founded in 2012, so over 10 years. They recently raised $200 million for the US expansion. In order to raise that amount of money, especially as equity, you generally need to have a pretty viable business. Basically, outside of fraud and other weird cases, your company needs to make sense. In case you're wondering, their US office is in Atlanta, and even before the raise, they had an office with over 50 people. Main takeaway is that it seems fine, it's nothing really sketchy, they're not just farming your information. Okay, so for level 3, let's talk about some other competing cards and also what happens if they go out of business. As you'd expect, there's a lot of other similar products from the bigger banks offering 1.5% or 1.5x. All of this without an annual fee, and you have a pretty reasonable expectation that they're going to keep it at that rate. One of the main fears of fintechs is that they end up lowering their rate, especially if it's harder to raise money. So if big banks, it's easy to subsidize their business, they're kind of expecting to lose money on their cards to bring business in for bank accounts and other services. So for example, when the Chase Sapphire Reserve launched, it ended up costing the bank $200 to $300 million. Small banks can't really do that for obvious reasons. Big banks easily can. One really good thing about the card though is that it has no foreign transaction fees. A lot of the other big banks do have no annual fee cards, but they'll try to toss in those foreign transaction fees unless you get the premium cards. Obviously depends on you, maybe it doesn't matter at all, especially if you don't travel or if you have other options that are more travel centric. Okay, so how does it compare? I think it depends on what your goal is. If you're purely focused on growing your business and literally nothing else, then cashback is fine. That's probably perfect. Even if you can get more value using points and doing other first class, business class stuff, you probably don't care. On the flip side though, if you run a small business, especially more of a family company, then I feel like that's kind of the end goal. You want to grow it enough and make it sustainable, but the idea is that you take money out and you still use it, whether it's for trips, vacations, or just other family things. The idea for those people is that 1.5% is great, but if you were going to travel anyways, so if you were looking to take that money out, then why not get maybe 3% or 6% value if you did the transfer partner stuff? You're trying to fly business anyways, so this is a more logical step. It's getting you more value for those points. Okay, so what about mid-sized companies? I think it depends on how you're structured and what your focus is, but cashback probably makes more sense. To be fair, I have seen a lot of mid-sized ones that are run by one person and they can pretty much do whatever they want with the cashback and points because it's their company. One interesting tactic too is if you want to interview candidates in person, if you have a smaller company or mid-sized company and you want to fly them in using those points. As you'd expect, your mileage may vary, so 2-1 makes sense for you. Okay, so one big question is what happens if the company goes out of business? Ironically, for us as cardholders, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that feels weird to say.
What?
For companies that are going out of business or if they're leaving a country that they're previously operating in, they kind of have two options. Either they sell the portfolio or they just give it up. So for example, if Capital on Tap goes out of business, then they might sell that portfolio to Chase and then Chase just manages it and it's pretty much either becoming a Chase card or they'll leave it as a standalone thing. It gets a lot more complicated of IP and stuff and how that transitions, but you get the idea that someone else can own it. The other option is that they give up on it and they pretty much just forgive your balance. So if you owe $10,000 or something or $20,000 and you have that as the balance on the card, then they just wipe it clean. It's pretty much like it never existed or if someone paid it off for you. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would any company ever do that? Pretend this is a tinfoil hat. Ironically enough, Chase has done this in the past. Chase Bank forgives all credit card debt for Canadian customers. So back in the day, Chase expanded over to Canada and then realized that it wasn't worth it for them. It was ironically easier to just forgive the balance rather than chase after people and sell that portfolio. So for example, Douglas Turner had a $4,500 balance on the card that he didn't have to pay off because it was effectively waived. And to be fair, I'm not saying that Capital on Tap is going out of business. All I'm saying is that if they go out of business, there is a non-zero chance that your balance is waived, which is a nice thing. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, asksebby.com, and also down below in the description box. If you made it to this point in the video, then leave an emoji of a bag of money in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the card? And also, does your business rely on access to credit in order to operate or scale? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, give this a thumbs up, consider subscribing, but otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.